Hello and welcome to the M is for Mama podcast. I'm your host, Abby Halberstadt, happy wife, mama to 10, Bible-believing Christian. And I have one of the wildest stories to tell you today. Before we get into all of the details, I want to highlight our new podcast sponsor, Kingsridge Elderberries. They are a small family-owned company in Indiana, and they supply all of your elderberry needs from cold-pressed juice to raw, fresh frozen berries to their elderberry syrup, which is so yummy and has such wonderful nutrients and vitamins for you and is full of antioxidants and nutrients and vitamins as you fight back sickness during cold and flu season. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to see updates on their family farm. And you can also use the code MAMA10 for 10% off of your entire order from tkrfarm.com. The Kingsridge Elderberry Syrup. Taste the difference, help push back the curse. That's tkrfarm.com. I also want to remind you about one of our favorite sponsors and some of my favorite people, the Voetberg family, who have created the Voetberg Music Academy. They are running some of their biggest challenges for their online music lessons this fall, where they are giving away thousands of prizes to students who participate. You can learn lessons in ukulele, mandolin, piano, guitar, and fiddle, and you can do it from the comfort of your own home and share lessons between siblings. The Voetberg Music Academy way includes weekly lessons, live coaching calls, 24/7 access to your instructor, and these fun challenges, which you can learn more about at voetbergmusicacademy.com. You can also use the code MISFORMAMA20 for 20% off each month that you're enrolled at voetbergmusicacademy.com. Check out the show notes for more. Okay, so let's dive into this crazy thing that I was referencing. And if you're going to start out saying that you're going to tell a story about one of the craziest things that's ever happened to you, you better deliver, right? I am so tired of these clickbaity things on social media that say things like, I just really need to apologize for something. And then, of course, they don't actually apologize for anything. They just have drawn you in with their seeming sincerity. Or they say, I just had the wildest thing happen to me. And they describe something that's essentially an inconvenience or something. And who am I to judge whether or not it is truly the wildest experience of someone's life? And you may yawn a bit after you hear my story, but something tells me maybe not. So I have had varicose veins brought on by pregnancy. I think they're probably hereditary. My dad has them, so I probably inherited them from him, but they didn't start showing up. And if you're like, I did not expect this story to start with, I have varicose veins, but I did just release a book called You Bet Your Stretch Marks about the ways that motherhood marks our bodies and souls and the worth that there is in that. And varicose veins are a very big part of my story as a mom for the ways that it has marked my body. And they started really popping out on my right leg specifically, with my pregnancy with Evie and Nola. You have a much higher volume of blood when you have a pregnancy, but also particularly a multiples pregnancy. And so I had maybe seen one or two like mild ones with my third baby, none with my first two. And by that fourth pregnancy with twins, with Evie and Nola, they were just coming in everywhere. And ever since then, they have gotten worse with each pregnancy. They are painful, they are unsightly, and they are not, getting better on their own. And so when I talked to the surgeon 5 years ago, when I first intended to get the surgery right after Titus and Toby were born, I essentially said, okay, so if I can stand them, if it's not debilitating every moment of every day, is it something that you would suggest that I still do? And of course, you would expect a surgeon to say absolutely, because they want the money. But he said, if you can function, that's fine. And that's up to you. But just know that as a degenerative condition, these are not going to improve as you age. You're going to see more kind of breaking down and calcification of the veins and things like that. So I ended up not getting a surgery to correct the veins after Titus and Toby because I had to go under anesthesia for it, which I have heard mixed reviews on people that have had the surgery while awake. Well, actually, I will back up and say none of the reviews of the actual process were mixed. They all said it was horrific, but I have had people say, like, I'm surprised that they put you under anesthesia because I didn't have to. I kind of wish I had, because it was really, really hard and it hurt a lot, but I didn't do it. I was awake during it. So their policy is that they put you under anesthesia. I was nursing 2 babies and I just could not figure out how to pump and dump and also keep up with the nursing schedule. And knowing what I know now about recovery, I probably am really glad that I didn't do it then, because that would have been tough. So finally on, I think it was August 22nd, I had this surgery, and I don't have a ton of experience with the medical community. Like, I haven't had a lot of procedures. Most of my experience is with birth. And so I did not realize that it is such a common thing for people that do the actual procedure to kind of assure you that it's going to be a piece of cake, that your recovery is going to be a snap, and that you'll be back on your feet in no time. So I actually started to get an inkling of this when my best friend had to have a skin cancer removed from her face. And they were basically like, we're going to get in there. We're going to, do a little snip here and there, and then you're going to be fine. And it turned out to be quite an ordeal. It was very painful. It took a long time to heal, had residual nerve pain. She was not just bouncing back immediately like they said she would be. And I was like, wow, it feels like they should probably tell you the truth, but maybe people wouldn't do it if they did. I mean, in her case, she didn't really have a choice. But we also saw this. Sean had hernia surgery recently. Same kind of thing. It's like, you're going to be up and moving, and it shouldn't be painful, and you might experience mild discomfort. And he recovered well, but there were definitely moments of way more than mild discomfort. And I wouldn't say the surgery or the recovery was quite as straightforward as they said it would be. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind going into the surgery, that when my surgeon was telling me, oh, you'll be back to playing pickleball in like 4 or 5 days, just do it to your tolerance of pain, and I think you'll be fine. And I even asked him about weight training, because I teach a weight training class, and I was getting the surgery done on Friday, and if I should train on Monday, because he had made it sound so la-di-da. And he basically said, I don't know, I might get a sub for that Monday, just simply because you wouldn't want to be lifting as much weight, but you might be fine. I also, once I had finally rescheduled this for this summer, had them call me and like 2 days before it was supposed to happen, and say the surgeon wasn't actually going to be in town that day and they needed to reschedule. And it pushed it back from, I think it was supposed to be done in June, to August instead. And then I realized it was going to be happening a couple of days before I was flying out on a weekend. And I was like, that's probably not good. So I called the nurse and I said, should I not be flying? She said, oh, you'd be fine flying, but your leg will be wrapped up, so maybe we better reschedule it. So we did. Okay. So that's the whole backstory. I'm setting you up for what's coming next. So I have the surgery. I do the anesthesia, so I don't experience any discomfort during the surgery. I get home and I'm fine. I'm not on any pain meds, but the effects of the anesthesia are still wearing off. And then my leg starts to feel uncomfortable. And I do take pain meds for the first couple of days, not the prescribed kind, but just, I think I took Tylenol and ibuprofen together, which is kind of a big deal for me. I don't typically do that, but I was like, you know what? This is pretty uncomfortable and I need to be able to sleep. So here I go. So did that for 2 days and everything was pretty normal. Then the bruising starts coming in after I take the wrapping on my leg off after 48 hours. And this is bruising like I have never experienced before. And I actually knew that this would happen because a friend of mine who had recommended this surgeon said, this is what your leg is going to look like afterwards. It's going to look like somebody beat you with a baseball bat. They don't tell you this. And they don't. They say you might have some slight redness along like the path of where the veins were. They do not mention that your leg will turn black and blue and that you will have like deep, deep bruising inside your leg that's very painful. So I was kind of prepared for that, watching my leg turn all these different shades of black and purple. Well, Sean left for a work trip on Monday morning early. And so we started our first week of school and had a great first day of school, but I was limping very heavily. So I was essentially maybe not dragging my leg, but having to limp along to get from point A to point B. And in a decent amount of discomfort, but I wasn't taking pain meds anymore. And I was like, we're just going to get through this. It's going to heal. So on Tuesday, after our first day of school, I drive to Dallas to be on a podcast. I did a podcast with Allie Beth Stuckey, and it was a really fun one if you guys want to check it out. And then I drive home. And as I'm driving home, I call my husband because I say, well, I was just checking in with him because he was gone. And so as I'm driving home, I call Sean and check in with him. He's on his work site, but he wasn't doing particularly well. He had a sinus infection and wasn't feeling great. So I was checking in. I was like, did you end up going in? How did that work out? And I said, I think, so you have to wear these awesome compression hose on your leg after you are done with the surgery to kind of hold everything in and to help blood flow. And so I have these compression leggings on or compression hose on. And I said, I think that it is digging a hole into my leg because it felt like I had like a blister on the inside of my thigh. Like there was something that was really, really hurting. So I pulled over to get some food and I went to the bathroom and I look at the inside of my leg and there's no blister, but there's kind of a red splotchy area that's maybe 3 inches long. And there's kind of a hard knot in it that's very painful to the touch. So I just think something's gotten irritated. I'm not that worried about it. But then this idea of a clot comes into my brain because the one thing that the surgeon mentioned is that you want to be careful to get up and move in between times of rest as you're recovering so that you don't develop what's called a DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis. And he said it's pretty rare and especially rare if you are an active person who moves a lot. And so it should be fine. No worries. So I'm looking at this thing on the inside of my thigh and I'm thinking, it's painful to the touch. It's not warm to the touch. Like, what is this? So of course, if you start Googling something, it's like, you're going to die, which hold that thought in your head. So I'm talking to my husband. I'm like, I don't know if I should go in and get checked for this, but I guess there's a possibility this could be a DVT or a clot. They say they're much more likely in your lower legs than your upper legs. This is in my upper leg. It kind of doesn't fit a lot of the symptoms, but I'm just curious what you think I should do. And I checked in with a friend who's a former nurse. I checked in with my best friend whose sister is like a trauma care nurse and just various other people. I called the after hours nurse at the clinic where I got the surgery done. And they all essentially said the same thing, which was, it doesn't sound too bad, but it would probably be wise to at least get it looked at. Well, I am stubborn when it comes to medical things. Like my brain is going, I am here solo parenting. I do not want to go to urgent care at, whatever time at night. I finally have time to go do this after I make dinner and take care of the kids and get everybody settled. And so I'm resisting majorly, but I keep praying, Lord, please help me to have wisdom in how to deal with this. Because I'll freely admit when someone says it's probably nothing, but you should probably have it checked, my brain says, I can wait till tomorrow. I was going to schedule an appointment with my surgeon and I had a follow-up appointment in 2 weeks anyway, but I was going to bump it back and maybe have him look at it if I really felt like it was something, but I didn't. I didn't really feel like it was anything. So I'm still asking the Lord for wisdom. And I ask like another person what they think, and they give me the same answer. I would check on it, even though it doesn't seem like anything, better safe than sorry. And I would like the beginning of their message would be like, I'd send a picture. It really doesn't look too bad to me. I don't know that I think that it's a clot. You're probably fine, but I would check on it. I'd better safe than sorry. And I would think, okay, they're about to give me the permission to not go into urgent care. And then they would always end with better safe than sorry. And the thing is, it's not like something where you're thinking, okay, well, I'll see if I have a temperature in the morning, or I'll see if the redness has spread in the morning. With a DVT, if you have one and it travels to your lungs, your heart, or your brain, it can kill you. And so if one of the options had not been, I might not wake up in the morning, and I'm here solo parenting all these kids, and my husband's not even home. I mean, I don't want to die and leave my children no matter what, but particularly bad timing, right? So I'm like, okay, fine. You're asking for wisdom, and the same answer keeps coming back. Better safe than sorry. So I drive in at 10:45 at night. All the younger kids are in bed. The older kids are either going to bed or kind of staying awake and worrying about me. And so I'm heading in and feeling kind of foolish, like honestly, that I'm going to get in there and they're going to tell me, tisk, tisk, dear lady, you are much mistaken and you wasted our time, but we'll still charge you a lot of money and then send you home. So I get in there and I tell the guy, the attending physician that comes in, my concerns. He looks at it and I kid you not, his eyes were like a pat on the head, like this expression of like, sigh, yet another hypochondriac in the room. But he did feel like a little bit of a hard spot in it. And he was like, it doesn't seem like anything to me, but we'll do a sonogram and, just to be safe. Well, I had said something about it on Instagram and I had made, I don't know that you would really call it a joke, but I'm like, okay, asking, I'm not asking for a friend. I'm asking for me, the lady that doesn't want to die of a pulmonary embolism. Well, a pulmonary embolism is when the blood clots get in your lungs and block your oxygen so much, essentially, that you damage your heart or you cause yourself so much distress that you can actually die. And I thought I was joking. If not joking, I thought I was exaggerating for the sake of, the post. And so they do the sonogram because I had called in. People online were like, don't go into urgent care because they won't have a sonogram. But I had called this particular urgent care and they did. I go in, they do the sonogram, and the lady kind of zips down the veins on the top of my leg where I have the part that I'm concerned about. Doesn't even really check that part because I think honestly they looked at it and were like, this lady is making a mountain out of a molehill. There's nothing here, which is kind of how I felt anyway. And then she gets to the bottom, like down to my calf muscle and underneath my knee. And she all of a sudden looks up at me and says, are you having chest pain? Very, very sharply, very seriously. And I say, no. And she says, okay, well, I'm almost done here, but I want you to keep your knee in this exact position. Don't move your knee. And I'm thinking, okay, I can do that. So my brain, I've had 2 times in my life where something was, if not medical, at least related to my health and my body, and where I just had this underlying feeling of there's a reason for this. So one was right before we got a sonogram with Titus and Toby. And I remember in the car, I was really tense, and I'm usually not before we get a sonogram. This is before we had 3 miscarriages in a row. We had other losses before that, but I really wasn't thinking anything. I just had this check in my spirit that there was something different, wrong, to be considered. I couldn't really put my finger on it. So we went in for that sonogram and she put the wand on my belly and she sees a little baby and she says, oh, how sweet. Look at the little jelly bean. And we were about 11 weeks along, I think. And I remember looking at it and being like, yep, that's sweet. Why won't this feeling go away? And then she moves the wand to the side to try to get a better view of this one baby and sees another baby. And it's like everything in my brain just clicked into place. And I was like, that's why this whole time there's been an inkling in my brain that something is going on. And there it is. And I mean, it wasn't anything wrong. It was something to rejoice about, but I just couldn't get settled until I figured that out. That's kind of how I felt about this visit. I kept telling myself it has to be nothing. Like this is not a big deal. But because I kept getting that response and praying for wisdom and still getting that response, as I went in, I kept having this kind of half thought. What if the reason you're here? And I wasn't really allowing myself to finish that thought. So the lady gets to my leg and I'm starting to think, I am here for a reason. There is something wrong. So I call my husband and I'm starting to tell him this, and the door bursts open because he's in California and he is trying to get back early, but he hasn't been able to get on a flight yet. And it is 12:30 in the morning at this point. And the door bursts open and the physician comes back in. He says, I do not have good news for you. I don't. Like, super dramatic. Like, come on, guys. Where's your bedside manner? Where's your, hey, that thing you were worried about is not a big deal, but we do want to talk to you about this. But it was like, I've really bad news. So I said, okay, what does that mean? And he said, you do have a blood clot. You have a DVT. It's behind your knee in your popliteal vein, I believe is what that is. And which is a really weird spot to have it, especially after, did you say you had a varicose vein surgery? And I said, yes. And he said, yeah, I don't really know why it would cause it to be here, but you have one and you're going to have to be on blood thinners for 6 months and you're not going to be able to do pretty much anything that you're used to doing. So there's one other time in my life where something similar to this has happened. And it was when I went in for nerve pain and sores all over my back when I was 1 month postpartum with Evie and Nola. And the girl walked in, took one look at my back when I was at urgent care and said, "Ugh, you have shingles." And I only barely knew what shingles was. I didn't have a lot of experience with it. And the way she said it, it made it sound like you have 3 months to live, you know? And so I said, "What does that mean?" And she goes, "It means you're going to be really miserable for at least 6 weeks and have horrible nerve pain for possibly the rest of your life. And you're going to have to stop breastfeeding. Didn't you say you had newborn twins? Yeah, you're going to have to stop breastfeeding." It was just very like heavy and drama filled. And I remember crying, and she was like, "Don't cry." And it turned out that none of those things ended up being true. I did have shingles. That part was true, but my midwife put me on an incredible regimen of vitamins at high doses to help get rid of the symptoms. And I actually was almost completely symptom free within 24 hours. And I was able to keep breastfeeding. So that was a happy ending. Thankfully, this one is too, as you can tell by the fact that I'm sitting here in front of you, but it got worse before it got better. So he says, you know, you're going to have to pretty much suspend all your normal activities. You're not going to be able to exercise. You're going to be on these blood thinners. I'm really sorry. I wish I had better news, but like, this is what it is. And this is really serious. So I'm there for another probably 2 hours, and they end up giving me a shot of blood thinners in my stomach called Lovenox, which I really think was a providence from the Lord. It's a fast acting 12-hour. It's only active for 12 hours. Blood thinner or anticoagulant is really what it is. And so I'm talking to Sean. He's 2 hours behind me. So I'm going home at almost 3 a.m. I'm telling him I have this blood clot. They've given me this shot, and I have a prescription for blood thinners. And we're trying to review all of our options, chat GPT things, read things online, try and figure out what's going on. But he makes an appointment for me the very next day with my surgeon for 1 p.m. So this is now Wednesday. I didn't go home till Wednesday morning, kind of middle of the night, Wednesday morning. And I am homeschooling and sitting with two of my children, Honor and Shiloh, reading to them on a kitchen stool in between them. And I have this pulse of like almost losing consciousness, like a very, very quick wave of dizziness and like the edges of my vision blurring and suddenly feeling like I could fall out of my chair. And I was like, and it just was a quick moment. And I thought, what was that? Now I will say that the physician the night before had said that the symptoms of Lovenox were things like lightheadedness, racing heart, chest pain, things that are similar to the symptoms of a pulmonary embolism. And so I was like, I wonder if I'm just having a reaction to that shot from yesterday. It had almost been 12 hours, but I'm thinking maybe that's what it is, or maybe I haven't eaten enough food or whatever. So I keep reading. It fades very quickly. I keep reading with them. And about 5 minutes later, it starts coming back, except if I were to have like a video going on that visualized or exemplified how I was feeling, it would be like the tips of your fingers going up in smoke as the rest of you starts to disintegrate. I was starting to lose feeling in my fingers and toes and starting to sway and to lose, but it wasn't, I have actually passed out before from either low blood pressure or something. It was just kind of a fluke. And it wasn't like that where you're just kind of momentarily dizzy and then you lose consciousness. It was like I was fighting against something that was taking over my body. My chest started to hurt. My heart rate was elevated. And so I call Sean and I'm like, my appointment's pretty soon. What do you think I should do? And he's like, call 911. And I'm like, no, Simon is here and he can drive me there. I can speak. I can sort of walk. We're going to get in the car and go right now. So keep in mind, I haven't had any symptoms like this until this day. And we jump in the car. As I'm riding in the car and Simon, my 17-year-old, is taking me to my surgeon's office, I start to feel a lot better. The symptoms fade and I can speak clearly and think clearly. And I no longer feel like I'm like pulling myself back from the brink of something. My heart rate has calmed down. We get there, we check ourselves in. I don't have any reason to think I'm in any kind of imminent danger because I don't have any symptoms at the moment. And I chalk it up to the fact that I probably was having a reaction to the medication. Those are some of the symptoms that it lists. Like that must be what it is. I also am thinking I probably don't have a DVT because Sean has called ahead to let them know that I'm coming. And they've said, okay, we'll check her out. But just know that it's very common for urgent cares when they have sonograms there to misdiagnose clots because they don't have a lot of experience with post-surgery sonograms and they may not know exactly what they're looking at. And so we have people come over here in a panic all the time that don't actually have a DVT. And they're like, so I'm thinking, okay, great. Maybe there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. And this has all been for nothing. And, I was so grateful that I had this red patch on my leg that ended up being nothing, that sent me in to find out that there was something wrong with me. And that was such a mercy from the Lord. But maybe he just wanted me to recognize that he's gracious and merciful and takes care of the details of our lives. And then I'm not actually going to have to deal with blood thinners and all of this stuff. That was kind of where my brain was. So I go in, I get the sonogram done. And within a couple of minutes, I know that there really is something wrong because she is spending all this time with the sonogram wand behind my knee, which is where they told me that the DVT was. And the first sonographer would not talk to me other than when she asked me if I had chest pain and told me not to move my leg, which I think she was genuinely worried if I moved my leg, that whatever was in my leg that she had found on the sonogram could go to my heart. And she was like, be still, which was probably maybe an abundance of caution, but either way, she was worried about it. So this new sonographer is much more communicative. And when I see her spending all of this time on the spot behind my knee, I said, I really do have a DVT, don't I? Because she said, before she started, she's like, I doubt you have one. Like, it just, you don't really fit the profile. And I doubt you have one. And she goes, there it is. It's there for sure. Yep, you do have one. But I am so confused because it's not connected to any of the veins that we did surgery on. And usually if the surgery is the cause of the DVT, then you'll have this connection. I'll be able to see it. I haven't found it yet. I've been looking for like 5 minutes because she spent a lot of time going back and forth over that area. And so I said, well, I actually had a traumatic injury to my calf muscle, my upper calf muscle on July 4th this year. So I popped a tendon. I ruptured a tendon in my calf muscle called the plantaris tendon. And she said, okay, where again? And I show her and she said, you know what? This actually makes a lot of sense. And blood clots only start kind of calcifying and deteriorating. I'm not going to maybe use all the correct medical terms, but I'm just trying to remember the way that she characterized it. They don't start looking like they're aged blood clots, so to speak, until after about 2 months. And obviously, we're within that 2-month window when I'm getting the sonogram done. So she's like, this blood clot would look the same on July 4th as it does now. So it is very possible that this blood clot is from that injury and not from your surgery. However, the surgery may have affected it. So we'll have to see about that. So my husband calls, he's in between flights. He's getting home as fast as he can, but he's coming from California, which is the wrong direction. You lose 2 hours coming this way. And he was having to reroute all his flights to rebook everything. And quite honestly, I've flown a couple of times recently, and each time it has been a little bit of a dumpster fire. Lots of delays, lots of changed gates, and just kind of confusion and like not knowing for sure whether you're going to get in when you're supposed to get in. And so I'm not holding out a ton of hope that he's going to get back that day. But he calls me from in between plane flights and is like, so what do they say? And I said, well, I really do have a deep vein thrombosis, and it's significant. So he was like, oh no. And I was like, yeah, I kind of thought I wouldn't, but there you go. So they take me to the nurse in the surgeon's office, and she asked me all these questions. And I knew that my husband had called ahead and told them that I had had some sort of episode, like lightheadedness. And I feel so much better now that I don't say anything to the nurse when she asked me all the questions. And she said, well, is there anything else? And guys, I'm such a doofus, but I almost didn't tell her. And I said, well, the only other thing would be that I kind of had this dizzy spell, kind of with some heart racing, and I felt almost like I could pass out, but it was weird. It was different than I've ever felt before. And she kind of whips her head up and looks at me and says, okay, I'm going to go get the surgeon. And he comes back, confirms the DVT, says he doesn't love the look of it because it looks like it could be mobile. It's not compressed and in an area where it can't move. And then he hears that I've had these symptoms, and he says, I don't like these symptoms. I need to send you for a CT scan. So then my husband calls back after another flight, or in a late, I don't remember what the order of things was, but he calls back to check in and I'm like, so yeah, I do have one. And the nurse was worried about my symptoms and the doctor is too. And he's sending me back for a CT scan of my lungs because they're worried I have embolisms, which are another word for clots essentially in my lungs. And he's like, why would that be the case? And I'm like, I really don't know. Well, as I'm getting wheeled back to the CT scan, which I've never had one before, I start getting tightness in my chest that's kind of wrapping around in my back. And it's not intense pain, but it hurts more when I take a breath, which I've read all the symptoms of a pulmonary embolism at this point, and I'm like, I am pretty sure I have them in my left lung. Like that's what it's starting to feel like to me. So they do the scan and they order it stat because they are kind of worried at this point. And I am being rolled past all the people that have been in the waiting room for 45 minutes, like everybody has to be. I'm like, I'm sorry. You have to sit here longer and I'm taking your spot. But they were expediting everything. I get the scan done and they roll me back to the room. I'm being a wheelchair princess. They are just rolling me all over the hospital. And I'm in a room by myself and I start having another episode. Like my fingers are going up in smoke. Like I can't form words. I can't process thoughts. My heart is racing. My chest hurts. And I am not close to losing consciousness, but I am there enough to think it would not be good if I just suddenly slumped over in this room by myself and the CT scan results take an hour and I've just been sitting in here for an hour. Nobody knows. Let me say that they had been very attentive up to this point, and I doubt it would have taken them an hour to check on me, but either way. So I get up and kind of wobble out to the hallway, walking rather unsteadily. And as I kind of come around the corner, because I don't see a nurse, I have to kind of grab a hold of a doorway to steady myself. And the nurse down the hallway and I see each other at the same time, lock eyes, and she starts running toward me. And I don't really even remember how I got back in the wheelchair. I guess I walked back in or she helped me back in and I sit back down. She's called for the surgeon. He's back in the room and someone says something to me, which I didn't really process at the time, but I realized later was they were telling me this room is about to be full of a lot of people. So there's all these codes going on over the intercom and someone leans down and goes, "Those are for you." And again, I'm having trouble taking all of this in. And sure enough, this is a little room. Within a couple of minutes, 90 seconds, there are like 12 people running into this room. And up to this point, I really had been super calm, like not loving the progression of events. Cause I don't know. I think my brain was like, they're going to find out there's nothing wrong. It's no big deal. This is all I don't know that I felt like I was overreacting, but like there's been a misunderstanding. Okay. This is not the way this is supposed to go, you know? And, so the surgeon is standing beside me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and I start tearing up because I think I'm just a little overwhelmed. Up to this point, I've just been, like I said, just, if not chill, very calm. Each time Sean called and I kept telling him like something new kind of hadn't gone the right way. And he's like, "Oh man, I got to get home." And I'm like, "I'm okay. They're taking good care of me." And in that moment, I start crying because I just am tired. Quite honestly, I hadn't gotten much sleep the night before. I don't know that I felt particularly scared. I just felt overwhelmed at the prospect of what the surgeon told me, which is you have multiple embolisms in both lungs and you are going to need to spend time here at the hospital for the next 2 days. Keep in mind, this is our first week of homeschooling. I'm solo parenting. I'm now having a pretty legitimate health scare where I don't know the size of these embolisms. I don't know their exact location, if they are likely to go anywhere else or to cause any more damage. And I'm experiencing an episode of symptoms that make you feel very out of control and woozy and weird. So they take off in a wheelchair with me in it to another part of the hospital because there's an attached ER. I don't even know where I'm going or what exactly is happening. I don't know if this is a case where they're going to try to extract the clots manually, like with some sort of instrument or scope, or, you know, like my brain is racing to are they going to cut me open and start digging things out of my lungs? Is this a thing? Like, how are these treated exactly? Because apparently I hadn't gotten that far in all of my Googling. And they take me to a room. They hook me up to a big IV. They do a blood test, which they've already done a blood test. They do an EKG because they're worried about my heart, because these clots in your lungs can really damage your heart because they're limiting your oxygen supply. And I'm just in this room and my husband calls for another check-in. And I'm like, it's funny now. It wasn't funny then. I'm like, so at this point I've given him like 3 bad updates. I've had an episode. I'm in the hospital. I really do have a DVT. The doctor is sending me for a CT scan because the episode was not my reaction to the drugs. He says that's very unlikely. He thinks there's something wrong with me. And now I've had the CT scan and there are embolisms and I am in the emergency room and they're doing an EKG on my heart right now. And he's like, what? It's just absolutely, completely freaked out, and understandably so, and can do nothing about it. Can't be with me. He was on flight number 3 maybe of the day. Can't get home any faster than he's doing. Can't do anything but pray and ask people to pray. I'm getting texts from people and DMs from people telling me they're praying for me, asking for updates. And I will say this, other than that moment where I cried, and just kind of felt like, okay, Lord, what are we doing? I had this just assurance and calm blanket of peace over me. Like, this is going to be okay. So I'm in this room by myself, just thinking, these are such bizarre circumstances, considering like none of this existed in my brain before yesterday. Right. And asking the Lord for wisdom and for healing and for, for the people that are my surgical team and the medical team to know what to do. And so it escalated very quickly. And I think for at least a little while there, they were genuinely worried they had a woman who could like keel over at any moment on their hands. After I'd been in the room, hooked up to everything, had the test done on my heart. I think they did another test on my heart. I'm running everything together in my brain now. And I just sat there for a while waiting for results and praying and texting with my friends who were checking in on me, which was so kind and also so encouraging, like just to not be in a room by yourself completely, to have your phone and the text messages from your family and friends. They came in and they essentially said, okay, we've really looked at your scan. The embolisms, there's multiple ones in each lungs. They're bilateral is what that's called, bilateral pulmonary embolisms, but they are small, which is good. And your heart came back perfect. You don't have any damage to your heart and your oxygen levels are good. And so we're going to monitor you for a while, give you a shot of this blood thinner in your stomach again, give you a prescription drug and possibly send you home. And so it went kind of from, you're going to be here for 2 days, like you're in a bad way, we're all freaked out, to it's not good. I remember asking the sonographer, like, is there a degree of DVT or are they all the same? She's like, well, there's no such thing as a good blood clot. Okay. Like, we don't like blood clots, but yeah, some can be bigger than others. Some can be more dangerous than others. I didn't have the super dangerous ones. So they gave me the shot. They discharged me. My son comes and picks me up. I went and picked my kids up from Wednesday night church, where I'd had one of my older kids drop them off so that they could have a sort of normal evening instead of sitting around worrying about me, and went and picked them up. And guys, I can't tell you how many times I have, resented having to drive into town to do something when it's at an inconvenient time, or like it's an hour of driving or an hour and a half of driving by the time you get to one place and drop somebody off and pick them up, like where you're just like, man, I don't have time for this. I was so grateful to be driving from where I was at this hospital to my church, which was like 45 minutes away. So grateful, or maybe even close to an hour, to be doing that, because it meant I wasn't in the hospital, because it meant I didn't have the worst version of this thing, because it meant that even though the news was bad over and over again all day long, ultimately the good news was that I was going to be on this blood thinner for 3 months, and that was going to work with my body to get rid of these clots, and that my prognosis was really good, and that I could see my kids and give them hugs and take them home with me, and that my husband was getting home as fast as he could. And so I went and picked them up, talked to some friends, drove them home, My girls wanted to watch Pride and Prejudice on the couch. Man, I am wiped out by this point. So the next thing I remember after maybe the opening credits of Pride and Prejudice, all snuggled up on the couch with my twin girls and Della, is my husband sitting beside me as I groggily realize that he's there and just giving me the most giant hug. And that feeling of just absolute safety, which I always get when he gives me his giant hugs. And just incredible gratitude. My word, I wish we could bottle up the thankfulness we have to be alive and the thankfulness we have to be near to those that we love and the thankfulness we have for the Lord's mercy in caring for the details of our lives when we have these near brushes, because it's so easy to take things for granted. And that may sound cheesy, but like I walk through my life taking for granted the fact that I can walk, that I can breathe, that I can, use my hands and my fine motor skills, and that my brain works to remember words. And it's only in moments where you don't have any of those things very well functioning that you're like, this would be such a big deal if it were gone. And I know that people that are listening are in positions where they have experienced that long term. And so one, I have great compassion for you. That experiential compassion, the compassion was already there, but experiential compassion, or at least a taste of it. But also, I know that I really, everything, every single step of this whole ordeal was orchestrated by God. From the very moment I saw this red thing that turned out to be nothing, but was the beginning of all of this, to getting that blood thinner shot in my stomach the day before I ever even had symptoms of pulmonary embolism. So it was already helping break those down, and to being in the right place. Like I started having that episode of lightheadedness and all of the other things basically in time to get in the car. I was going to have to get in the car in 10 minutes anyway to go to my appointment. By the time I got there, they were already expecting me, ready for me, had a sonogram person booked for me. Just the Lord ordered the steps of it in such a phenomenal way. And, one encouragement to you. So one thing I was saying as I was sharing about this on social media, was that the Lord really does work everything, even the inconvenient things or the scary things or the things that we're like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this on the week before my book launches, which the week before book launch and book launch weeks are they're just intense. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information to process. There's a lot of boxes to check. And there's a lot of activity and celebration, yes, but it's a lot of work. So all of that in my brain, well, it took me back 2 years ago to the story that I shared with you about how 12 days before I launched a book called Hard is Not the Same Thing as Bad, the entire downstairs of our house flooded, which ended up leading to our moving out for 6 months while we did a DIY renovation and put everything back and repainted and redid everything, and then actually had to redo all of our kitchen cabinets and countertops because the cabinets were compromised by the water seeping into the wood. And it was a lot. It was a lot. It was kind of the defining moment of the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024. And so many people messaged me, like, seeing the Lord work in your family's life through this in the midst of your launching a book that claims that just because it's hard doesn't mean that it has to be bad, has been an encouragement to me. People literally told me they bought my book because this happened. And I was like, okay, Lord, I mean, that's a pretty extreme sales pitch policy, but clearly it was your will to use this for my good, for my family's good, for the good of others, and for your glory. And I wouldn't have chosen to do it this way, but I have seen such good come from even just the messages I received afterwards from people who experienced the same thing. They went through a house flood afterwards, and they came and they knew that they had someone to talk to and someone to encourage them and someone to pray for them that understood. And so here I am. This all went down a week ago, essentially, in the middle of the night, Tuesday, Wednesday. And, a week after that, launched You Bet Your Stretch Marks yesterday. And I was just laughing because I was like, Lord, this is so relevant. These these marks of motherhood that you've given me, I talk about how they're worth it and obeying you is worth it and having this legacy mindset and not letting the world's view of the way our bodies are marked, the way our souls are stretched, change how we view motherhood and the worth that it bears. And here you are having me walk this path that's just parallel to the theme of this book 1 week before. Like, nothing is wasted and you have a purpose for all of it. And I found out a very specific purpose, because we don't always know purposes immediately, but I found out a very specific one, which was that someone told me in my DMs on Instagram that my sharing about my experience would very likely help someone else to get checked for this same condition. I have had 2 people so far message me and say, one was a mom of that was 20 weeks pregnant and had an injury to her ankle, which the injury aspect can cause a blood clot, or the immobility after an injury can. And she said she was having some symptoms, and she watched my stories, and it was the nudge that she needed to go be safe rather than sorry. And she found out she did have a deep vein thrombosis, and now she is on blood thinners for the rest of her pregnancy. I know someone, a mom of 5, who was pregnant with her 5th baby, who died of a pulmonary embolism in her sleep. And that, that happens. That's a thing. And so the fact that this pregnant mom and her baby are now safer, certainly, because they have this knowledge is just, imagine how much that blessed me to hear that the Lord had taken care of it that way. And then another mom that follows me was driving back from dropping off her child at college, was in the car more than usual, so was on Instagram more than usual, saw my stories and was following along with the whole saga. And her husband was having calf pain. Well, your calf is where DVTs usually form. That's the most likely place for them. And it kept increasing. And finally, it was getting really uncomfortable. And she said, I'm following this lady and she's talking about this thing. I wonder if that's what you have. They went in and got it checked. He did indeed have a clot. Again, these are the kind of things that can travel to the rest of your body and cause you to be extremely sick or to even die. And so that didn't happen because he found out what was wrong with him and was able to get on the medication as well. So praise God for his providence. When Simon picked me up from the whole day at the hospital where kind of things went really, it got worser. There's an Instagram audio that says it got worser. And I just kept thinking about that all day and kind of giggling to myself because it was either that or cry, although I did some of that too. When Simon picked me up after that happened in the evening, we went to dinner, grabbed something really quick before I went to pick up the kids from church. And I asked him to pray before our meal. And I had been sharing with him the steps that had led me there. And he prayed something like, dear God, thank you for taking care of Mama and for keeping her safe. And thank you that in your providence, you ordered every step the way that it was supposed to go. And I loved that he was able to see that. I loved that the Lord was able to use a not so ideal situation to teach that lesson to my son. So I'm sharing all of this with you because it really is one of it was a whirlwind. It was a 24-hour whirlwind for sure for me. And I had made kind of a lighthearted reference to the fact that I didn't want to be the mom that, died of a pulmonary embolism. And yet it turned out that's literally what I had in my lungs. I did not die, thanks be to God. But I definitely have that appreciation that I was mentioning to you earlier of the fragility of my health, something that I often take for granted, and the sovereignty of a good God who worked all things together for his good pleasure and for our own good. And I wanted to encourage you, hopefully, in the things that you're walking through, that he cares just as much for you as he does for me or anyone else, that he is always good regardless of the outcome, but that we are to rejoice and to boast in the Lord when he does show us grace in this earth, in this earthly realm, in this life, and gives us more days with our family. And it really does give me appreciation for, I get to be my kid's mom and I get to be my husband's wife, and get to be a friend, get to keep sharing with you guys. So if you need more encouragement in this vein, you can grab You Bet Your Stretch Marks. It is out for sale everywhere. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I would love it if you love it and could share with anyone that could need this encouragement as well. And I am just so grateful that I am here, and I am happy that you're here as well. If you enjoyed the M is for Mama podcast, I would be so honored if you would subscribe and follow along, maybe share with friends, or even leave a review. And if you want more content on motherhood and biblical responses to cultural issues, be sure to follow along on Instagram at m.is.for.mama.